Hi, I'm Xander Mclaren. I'm in grade 12. Before I start, I just want to thank everyone who came out to Flora's and my opening last night. It was a great turnout. It was wonderful experience. So I lied to myself about my art for a long time. I did an art talk last year in which I identified patterns in my work going back to early childhood. But soon after, I realized I was getting ahead of myself and I was not yet producing honest art. So I've attempted to rectify this situation over the past year. My culminating project at the end of last year, which is actually the oldest artwork of mine that I still like, was a box full of maple seeds. I collected hundreds of maple keys, stripped them of their leaves and excess fibers, dried them out, and stored them in a box. The piece was not about the end result so much as the process. I felt at the time that I was overthinking most things in my life, especially art, and so my goal was to eliminate as much conscious thought as possible while I was working on the piece. The entire process was simple gathering and processing of raw materials, which is a very mindless and repetitive action. So I set parameters for what I was doing and followed a pattern without further thinking or worrying. This model is what most of my work has been built on ever since. Since the seed experiment, most of what I've been making are line drawings and line paintings. So these process-based works are made by drawing fewer than 10 establishing lines across a piece of paper or canvas, and then filling in the blank areas in a logical manner. I believe that these pieces have a fundamental simplicity and honesty to them, because beyond the initial concept, I'm only following a pattern. They work within a set of rules grown in a manner similar to natural processes like tree ring growth or sediment buildup, and they do not intentionally depict anything, showing only their creation process. Aside from these line drawings, I've done some installation work. These were for portfolio day, one using electronics and another using pieces of trees. So the process of making these was more engaging because there were more decisions at the time of the creation, but I still see each as a system of repetition and growth, tracing back to the seeds. So when people see my line drawings, they usually go, "Okay, you're nuts." And I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment because it's very repetitive and tedious and basically uncreative beyond the initial concept. So I was thinking, if I've already figured this out, so why don't I automate the tedious part? So by the end of this year, I hope to have finished a piece of software that takes a few lines drawn by the user and interpolates the rest. So it's the same process, but automatic and instant. So, robots are taking over. The future is now. So the realization that I might rather go the easy route with this and make the pieces this way has kind of gotten me questioning this sort of work. So I'm trying some new things now. I'm experimenting with different media and starting to incorporate actual representational imagery again. This is a bit strange because I spent a long time trying to get away from drawing things. Now, I should note that I do have serious doubts about these new pieces because they are not really thought out in the same way that these line drawings are. So if my systems work was defined by an internal logic, my new work seems to be the exact opposite. I've realized that I'm much better at improvised loose work than I once was, and I think this is the result of making quite a bit of tight logical work and sort of bottling this energy up. So taking an almost year-long break from making things, like making new things up, it let me develop my aesthetic tastes to a point where I think I know much better what I want my finished pieces to look like. So to a large extent, I got over my fear of not knowing what to put on the page. And so I've developed this kind of percussive flow when I work on drawings like this, where I keep going once I've started and alternate between high-density detailed areas and low-density areas of secondary importance. So I think it would be fair to say that I'm stylistically flailing a little bit right now, especially compared to the consistency of what I was doing even a few months ago. So because moving away from the simple thing that I was focusing on has allowed me to understand my body of work a bit better, just because you have the sort of wider perspective to work from, but I do at the same time feel as though I do not have nearly as solid a direction. So if honesty is what I'm going for in my work, which it is, I think this confusion makes a lot of sense. I mean, like many of my peers, obviously, the things I do after high school loomed quite large as yet another unknown in my view of the near future. You'll never see your friends again. You know, who God knows who you're going to prom with. You know, everything's changing. You know, Trump's going to win the election. So, you know, my new work is uncertain because I am uncertain and I'm scared. So some of my favorite new pieces are actually landscapes, which I did some landscapes when I was younger, especially, and these are visually different, but I feel like I'm coming from the same place with them. So it's a more visually chaotic style that I'm working in now, but it does feel like a kind of comforting return to my childhood art in a way. And this new work is certainly underdeveloped and certainly quite naive in style. I find it selfish, maybe not in a bad way though, because I think that's something I might need. Because when I was making the large line drawings, they were probably more for other people than they were for me. They were the most objective art I have ever made because they were just a depiction of a process with minimal involvement from me. The scale reinforced this too, because they're all large canvases and they grabbed people's attention and often made their eyes hurt. I liked this, you know, kind of having that sort of power, but I mean, but it also feels awkward at times, kind of shoving your stuff in people's faces in such an aggressive kind of way. So my first actual exhibition opened last night, and it definitely confirmed this insecurity, because I do spend an unhealthy amount of time looking for the approval of others, but getting this approval does not necessarily fulfill this need. I mean, that being said, I didn't really take my art seriously until I focused more and scaled it up into this sort of thing. The line drawings are a body of work that I ultimately do like, but I knew from the start they had an endpoint and that I would eventually grow bored with doing this over and over again. So despite moving on from these for now, I think I achieved the goal I set out with when I was gathering the seeds, because I can now make art without worrying in the same way that I did before, and as a result I can make much more honest art. That isn't to say that I'm a happier person or something as a result of my artistic progression. I think Mr. Very once said something along the lines of art being a gateway drug to a life of misery. But it has, like, it's made me realize some uncomfortable truths about my ego and my insecurities, but this process has reinforced to me the importance of honesty in art. I get really pissed off by art that claims to be more than it is, whether that's through like a bad artist statement. I mean, we've all seen lots of those, or you know, I mean, that's the worst thing, but it can be stuff in the work as well, just empty use of imagery or whatever, and not really connecting to the artist statement to the art. So I think the further away I can get from this trap, it's better for me, because I think that bullshit can dazzle, but I think truth will always resonate. Thank you.